NFL fans, welcome to another episode of NFL Jocks and Pigskins. With Tom Pollen, I'm Dave Holcomb. No Chris Smitherman with us today, but he did help us produce the show beforehand. And we got a great show again for you today. A lot of news around the Falcons this week. Releasing Mike Davis, 1 year running back in Atlanta. Thought he might be the solution to the problems they've been having running the ball. Todd Gurley wasn't the solution. So brought in a different veteran last year. And he's gone after one season, just like Todd Gurley. So we'll dive into that. Grady Jarrett got a contract extension that is both positive and negative, I would say, for the Falcons. So we'll explain why after we talk about Mike Davis. And if there's time, we'll dive into a little dynasty fantasy talk with what rookies should be on your radar heading into the summer.
Yeah, it's getting to be that time, isn't it? You got to figure out who's going to play, who's in a good situation. A lot of things to consider when you're going into a dynasty league, which is probably why I don't do dynasty leagues. I wouldn't be any good at them.
It's definitely a different animal, especially around the draft, drafting your players. One thing I learned really quickly, if you don't get one of your favorite players, a guy that you really wanted in a redraft league, I usually just shrug my shoulders. I won't reach for anybody. I don't care.
Right.
Maybe I'll get them next year. Well, you don't get that with Dynasty. And it put the whole NFL draft really in perspective, like why NFL GMs might reach for a guy. It's because if they don't get him, there's no draft for him again next year, and they get to watch him play for another team. So that's one thing I learned real quickly with the Dynasty League.
Yeah. So, well, how long have you been playing Dynasty? How long?
A while now. I've only done one league in Dynasty, so the same format and everything. But this will be, let's see, 7th season. I think our first year was 2016, 16, 17.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
7th season. I have yet to win. I have finished runner-up 5 times.
Ooh.
5 losses.
Oh, that's nasty.
Game. Yeah, it's rough. And I don't think there are many players left that I drafted the first year. I had Julio Jones that I traded at the beginning of last season. I drafted Ben Roethlisberger in 2016. He's gone. I think those might have been the last 2 guys. Or actually, I think I have Keenan Allen still. I think I drafted Keenan Allen back in 2016. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun because you have the same guys and you follow them through their careers, and they're on your dynasty league. AJ Brown is a guy that I got, and I'm very curious to see how he does now with his new team.
Right, exactly. Different situation for AJ Brown now. So, would you trade somebody if all of a sudden you found out he's in a worse situation, or you feel he's in a worse situation? How many trades can you make in this league?
Well, as many as you can pull off, really. But I did that. I guess I would say it depends on the situation. Last year with Julio Jones, I did do that because I had AJ Brown. Part of the reason why I didn't want Julio Jones anymore, yeah, he was aging, injury prone, but I also already had who I thought would be the Titans' #1 wide receiver. So
True.
I did trade Julio Jones last summer, tried to get as much value for him as possible. AJ Brown, I'm not going to do that because he's younger. He's
right.
He was injured last year, but I don't think he's slowing down like Julio Jones at this point in his career. He's a lot younger guy. And when a move like this happens, you just kind of have to accept that, yeah, on the Eagles, AJ Brown might not be as good or productive as he was on the Titans. And that's
it might just be what Jalen Hurts needs. You never know.
Could be. Yeah. That's kind of the way Dynasty works. You can't really prepare for the real life trades. And sometimes you get lucky. Your guy goes to a better situation. Sometimes he goes to a worse situation.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some Falcons news. I know the fans are probably sitting there saying, what the heck are you guys talking about? Let's talk.
Yeah. Well, first I want to say today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. You can download the app in your app store. And when you do that, I'm seeing if I can pull up the code here. Make sure you use the promo code ASU. That supports us. you give some love to the channel by using that promo code, and you get some free money. 100% match on your first deposit up to $100 in the app when you use that promo code ASU.
Yeah, so it's always good. As I say, they get you deposit $100, you get another 100 from Prize Picks, and there's so many places, so many ways you can make prop bets on Prize Picks. You can make your different props, different sports. So NBA playoffs, they give deals on guys too. So sometimes you can find a good deal, and you got an automatic winner, and you just got to pair them up with somebody. So it works out pretty well for a lot of players.
Have you bet at all on cricket in the last week?
No, I haven't bet on cricket. I've I haven't. I've been busy this last week. Work has kept me busy, so I haven't had a chance to really analyze the cricket statistics and see who's scoring the most runs and who's who's making contact, who's not making contact, that kind of thing.
Right.
Who the best bowlers are. In cricket, the pitchers are called bowlers. So, who are the best bowlers? Who are my guys facing? That it's rough. You got to do a lot of analysis with cricket.
Well, you seem to have the terms down. I don't know. Maybe you're just throwing them around to make yourself sound smart, but
I don't know how they play the game, but I do know some of the terms.
Yeah. So we'll get back to football now, but do download Prize Picks using that promo code ASU. The Falcons, some big news this week post NFL draft. The time between the draft and the schedule release, you're kind of always wondering, is there going to be much to discuss on talk shows? And this week, the Falcons made pretty major news by releasing veteran Mike Davis, saved $2.5 million in the salary cap against the salary cap for this season by doing that. I really am a big fan of Mike Davis, to be honest. He's one of my favorite guys to watch, but he was a bit disappointing last year with the Falcons. Part of that was the offensive line, sure, but Cordero Patterson, his running mate, was a lot more productive than he was. And when Patterson was doing so much of everything, it kind of left not many touches for Mike Davis in a lot of situations. And he just wasn't able to excel. Drafting a running back now and that opportunity to save some money kind of made this a no-brainer. Yeah,
it didn't surprise me. It surprised me it took him till now to actually do it. But, it's a good time. You give Davis a chance to catch on with another team before training camp. And gives a chance for the Falcons to look at some young players, and it's not a bad thing. I don't think Falcons fans are going to be mostly disappointed. A lot of Davis's problems had to do with the offensive line. I mean, he was making first contact about a yard and a half, I think 1.9 yards into his carries was an average, and that's way down on the list of NFL running backs. When you're hitting contact that quickly, you're not going to be productive. You can't. It's just impossible. You're trying to run through a wall. And, his yards after contact weren't very good, but that's because his first contact, he's making contact with two or three guys. He can't, it's not anything bad about his escapability. It's just he was targeted, and that his offensive line didn't do him any favors.
What surprised me, I'd have to double check the exact figures, but I believe Patterson had more rushing yards after contact per carry than Mike Davis did. And Davis is known for being a power back. So that was the only thing that disappointed me or surprised me about his analytics, I guess you could say. But I would agree with you. Most of the disappointment around Davis was that offensive line.
Yeah, but the thing is with Patterson is more of an elusive back, a guy who, you give him a step, you give him a, and I say pitch the ball or give him a step that he can make a move. Mm-hmm. And he's strong enough to keep going. Davis, is a between the tackles guy. And
That's what I'm
once you
saying. Though.
got
Don't you
him,
think he's strong enough to keep going too? If he's a between the tackles guy.
yeah, but not when you got 2 or 3 guys hanging off of you because you don't have a hole you're running through.
Yeah. Okay.
You got to give him some kind of space. You got to create something for him to, give him a one-on-one with somebody. Then maybe, he runs over a linebacker, runs over somebody, at second level, but he can't even get to the second level. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Guys were on him pretty much right away. And what kind of made him so dangerous with Carolina in 2020 was he was kind of in the role that Patterson was in. He caught a lot of passes.
Yeah.
And that opportunity just wasn't there because Patterson was eating up all those opportunities. And I mean, it was hard for anyone like us to say, well, Mike Davis needs to be on the field more in passing situations to catch the ball because, I mean, Patterson was doing so well. So it didn't give Mike Davis a chance to be a dual threat like he was in Carolina.
Right.
And then it felt like every time Davis was in the backfield, he was going to get the ball, that it was a running situation. Because if it was a passing situation, Patterson was out there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Defensive coordinators aren't stupid.
Yeah,
they get these trends very quickly, and when they see Davis out there, they know what they're looking at. They know what they get. Patterson. It's too bad that when Davis was out there, they didn't try to get him the ball more in the passing game, slip him through the line or out in the flat where he could actually make use of that strength by going one-on-one against tacklers instead of, facing, not having a wall and trying to get through a complete wall of tacklers, at the line of scrimmage.
Davis caught 44 passes for 259 yards last year, compared to 2020 when he had 59 receptions for 373 yards, 2 touchdowns. Receiving in 2020, just 1 in 2021. So, I mean, it wasn't like it was just a crater, his receiving production. It did really feel like he got the ball or a lot more opportunities in 2020. And that's all. Keep in mind that they played an extra game in 2021 as well, and those numbers still declined.
Right. I'm a little surprised Arthur Smith didn't use him more in the passing game. Seems to be, that would be what Arthur Smith would do. He likes to use those big guys in the passing games. He likes to use his tight ends down the seam. Likes to get these guys involved. And I'm a little surprised that Smith didn't get Davis more involved. It would seem to be his trend, the way he likes to run his offense.
Yeah, and it seemed like that was what he was trying to do in week 1. I would say week 1, there were a lot of double tight end sets, a lot of 2 running backs, even with Patterson and Davis on the field at the same time, from what I remember. But if you guys remember, that game was 32-6. So I think maybe that game plan got thrown out of into the trash really quickly, unfortunately. For Davis.
It's really unfortunate because I don't think the Falcons were ready in week 1. You have a new coach, you have a new system, you're putting in new plays, new philosophy, and you don't run your starters out in the preseason for even 1 down at any point. Yeah. So it's tough to be ready to play this new system in week 1 when you haven't had a chance to run it yet. And I blame Arthur Smith for that, the fact that he didn't play his starters the entire preseason.
Yeah, that's a great point. We brought that up a lot during the season. I think you're absolutely right. And that was a game that, Eagles ended up making the playoffs by a game or 2. And the Falcons missed it by a game or 2. And that game could have made a huge difference. That's a two-game swing against the team that, I believe the Eagles finished 9-8, would have been 8-9, and the Falcons would have been 8-9 with that win and had the tiebreaker against the Eagles in a two-way tie anyway. So, that was a big loss right off the bat at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. So, as I say, it went downhill from there. If you didn't start using your two back sets, and that's the thing that drives me nuts is you got two backs who can do damage in the passing game. So why don't you use them more? Because, once you lost Ridley, you lost a lot of options. You were trying to rely on Kyle Pitts, for your deep passing game, and it was tough to do. I mean, this is a rookie still. He's still learning. He's got great talent, but when you don't have anybody else you need to look at in the secondary, you can go front and back on him. It didn't look like there was double coverage on Pitts, and I know a lot of fans say, well, he was still single covered. No, he was double covered. He had a guy behind him. There was a safety playing back in case the ball went to him. So, Matt Ryan knows when a guy is open, when a guy's facing single coverage. Matt Ryan knew that if he sometimes throwing the Pitts, he was going to get in trouble because there was that safety back there.
Pantera brings up a very great point as we bring our conversation back to Mike Davis. And I think that's why Davis was expendable. You look at the depth chart at running back, you brought back Cordell Patterson, which I was a little bit surprised that Patterson wanted to come back, to be honest. I thought maybe he'd want to go to a contender. I guess this was before they traded away Matt Ryan.
But he had his best season with the Falcons last year.
That's true. And then after Patterson, you got Damian Williams, the rookie from BYU, Quadri Allison, and Caleb Huntley, who are pretty young backs as well. Allison's been around for a few years, but Huntley entering his second season. So that's a lot of bodies in the backfield, and that's what made Davis expendable when you save that $2.5 million against the cap, which is exactly what the Falcons are trying to do this week with really a bunch of moves. Let's get into re-signing of Grady Jarrett. And there are other comments that we will get to. Thank you for commenting.
Yes.
We'll get to them when the conversation flows to that comment, and please keep sending them our way. We love hearing from you guys. But the other big news from this week for the Falcons is the extension for Grady Jarrett. And that will create $10.9 million in cap space for this season. And I started off the show saying, this is good and bad for the Falcons. It's mostly good. I would definitely say, this locks up a player that is their top defender right now on their defense for a few more years. And that's obviously a good thing. And you open up salary cap space in 2022. My only concern, the Falcons have done these kind of extensions before where you get, immediate salary cap relief, but then you kick the can further down the road. And I'd have to look further into the contract details for Jarrett to see exactly what they're paying him moving forward. But I'm just concerned are the Falcons, we know they're taking one on the chin. I believe Terry Fontenot said that. Why not just continue to take it on the chin and not try to open up salary cap space for a season that you're probably not going to compete in, rather than kicking the can down on Grady Jarrett when he's going to be a bit older and not worth that cap hit? That's my only concern with this deal.
I understand that, but you also have to have a leader somewhere. Grady Jarrett's the leader on this defense.
Yeah, well, he's already under contract for this year, though, right?
Yes, but you're going to have to extend him at some point. You might as well do it now and say, this is the guy we're going to build around. This is the man who's going to anchor this defense. And if you give Jarrett a couple of guys around him, he's going to be that much more effective. The only reason he wasn't as effective last year was he didn't have any edge rushers that were taking the pressure off of him. He was taking double teams the entire year.
I think he still was effective.
I think he was. Yes, he was a factor. He could be even more of a factor. He should be an all-pro every year. He's got the talent. He just doesn't have anybody to work with. And, give the defense or an offense somebody else they have to worry about. That's why I'm hoping that, Atlanta finally got it right with the edge rusher this year.
Yeah.
Because I think you make Grady Jarrett that much better. And again, he's a leader on the field. He's a leader in the locker room. He's the man on defense. Deion Jones, you would think, would probably be the man on defense. From what I understand, no. Grady Jarrett is the guy you want out there on defense. He's the guy who leads that unit. So you have to keep him. And I'm not worried about the fact that they locked him up for long-term money. You got to do it with someone. And he's not. It's not outrageous money. It's his base salary next year is $16.5 million. He's got a $4 million roster bonus, so cap hit $20 million. That's not a bad thing. That's pretty good for an elite defensive lineman, an elite defensive tackle. So you're getting him at a good price. He and the Falcons came to terms. He wanted to stay here. The Falcons wanted to keep him, and I think they both worked hard to make that happen.
He'll be about a $20.5 million cap hit through the 2025 season. And yeah, I think ultimately it is a great thing that he's locked up. I just wanted to give kind of a devil's advocate approach there that
who are you, Dave?
I guess no matter when they extend him, he was probably going to be a $20 million cap hit regardless. So
right, regardless, he wasn't going anywhere. You're going to have to extend him. It was that time. You have to show him that you're serious about you're serious about building around him. He's the man. All right. So I think they're both happy with that situation.
Todd commenting, thank you, Todd, for watching the show. Let's get real. Falcons are paying Grady for past work. He ain't the Grady of 2016. Then we have the opposite viewpoint from Wallace Smith. I think this was a good move for re-signing Grady Jarrett.
Well, it's hard to be the Grady Jarrett of 2016 when the Falcons actually had an effective pass rush that year with Vic Beasley.
Yeah.
I mean,
led the league in sacks.
Right. I mean, at this point, the last few years, you haven't had anybody that a defense has had to worry about. You can go double team on Grady Jarrett, not worry about any pressure on your quarterback. It's tough to do. It's tough for a guy to work when he's the only real effective defensive lineman that you have on your defense. It's hard to look that good. And Grady Jarrett's still in his prime. He's still a young guy. I mean, he's got the time to. I still think he could be very effective. I still think he's very effective. I like him, and I like the fact that he's still got years ahead of him. He's still got another contract ahead of him, and the Falcons went ahead and locked him up. I just looked at his age. I don't know if he's got another contract ahead of him. He's 29, but right. I think he's still got plenty of prime left, and this is the time to do it.
Turned 29 last week. Happy delayed birthday, Grady Jarrett. I'm sure he's watching.
Sure. Yeah.
Todd's pushing back on you.
Yeah.
He says if Grady this year had one sack, name not called much. So he's not a fan of the signing.
He was also credited with 17 pressures, which was tied for first on the team. And very rarely misses a tackle. So missed tackle percentage is very good. So, again, I think because you're not giving him any help up front, he's the guy. He's the guy you can concentrate on. You can throw. It's hard for me to explain. It's just, if you're not bringing anybody else, if you're not worried about anybody else on defense, then it's going to be tough to be effective. Yes.
Well, Wallace Smith is in your corner, and he brings up another good point that, in Dean Pease's system is a little bit more complex. It was the first year for Grady in there. I hate to keep bringing up the preseason last year, but, the Falcons didn't take that too seriously, didn't play much. So it was kind of learning on the fly during the season. And that could have been part of the reason why Jarrett didn't produce as much statistically as in 2020 or 2019 too. I would say you both can be right. The Falcons could be paying for past production, and they're not going to get maybe as much production going forward as they have in the past. But I think you're also right too, that maybe the production goes up if the defense is a little bit better around Grady Jarrett. I mean, I think both of those things both those points that you and Todd are making can be true at the same time.
Yeah, I'm not saying Todd is wrong. I'm just trying to give reasons for why he needs to look a little bit deeper into this. He might be right, but you can't build your team around that. You got to take a look at what Grady Jarrett brings to your team and realize that you have to have a leader. If you're going to have a young defense, if you're going to have an unproven defense, and that's basically where the Falcons are going in 2022, you got to have a veteran guy who can be in there and still, teach these guys how to react, how to play, how to be an effective defense, how to come together as a defense. I think a team can come together around Grady Jarrett.
Yeah, I definitely say the defense for sure can come around to and rally around Grady Jarrett. Todd, sending you some love.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to a question from a listener from about 15 minutes ago, and he says hi at first. Jack's Boy. I don't think we've had a comment from Jack's Boy before. Maybe he's a first-time watcher. Am I wrong there? Have we heard from Jack's Boy before?
No, I don't think so. This is the first time.
And he asks, might Debo be next? And he doesn't mean Debo Samuel. He means Deion Jones. Will Deion Jones be the next cap casualty for the Atlanta Falcons? I think we had a comment here. Let me see. Somebody answering that question, if I can find it real quickly. Oh, here we go. It's from Wallace Smith. He says he thinks they keep Deion Jones for one more season. And I think he made this point about Grady Jarrett. He'll be better in the second year in Dean Pease's system.
Right.
But I guess, for the same reason that Mike Davis got released, drafting a running back this year, had a running back drafted last year, brought back Cordero Patterson. The linebacker situation is pretty crowded for the Atlanta Falcons as well, especially if you believe in the young guys they brought in, Troy Anderson and D'Angelo Malone. Those guys, Malone plays on the outside. He's an edge rusher. And I guess they brought in, the kid from Penn State too, could play linebacker, but an outside edge rusher. So is Troy Anderson potentially a replacement for Deion Jones down the road that makes him a possible cap casualty?
He could be, but not this year. The Falcons already have $62 million in dead cap this year. They're not going any deeper. And Deion Jones is dead cap hit is $24.3 million. They're not going to take another deep cap hit. Now, Deion Jones, I think, has a year to actually show that he's still going to be effective for this team, that he could still be a monster, in the middle for the Falcons, because next year his dead cap is only $5.2 million. So you don't get rid of him this year. You go ahead and move forward with him this year, especially now you don't need the cap space anymore. Unless you're going to try, I think they're still going to try and find somebody to bolster the offensive line, but they've created the cap space to do it. At this point, no, Jones is not going to go anywhere this year. If he doesn't up his production, if he doesn't respond well with some of these younger guys around him, he might be a cap hit next year, because you're clearing that $62 million of cap space with Julio Jones and Matt Ryan, and now you have room where you can eat that $5 million and still not worry about it. So yeah, Jones has got this season to show Dean Pease that he wants to be here.
Yeah, you bring up a great point with the $5 million cap hit next season. That makes it a lot cheaper to cut him. False start. Falcon says Debo definitely up next. I was going to counter your point about he's cheaper to cut, and well, he's also cheaper to keep on the roster
Right.
if he's maybe not worth the big cap hit, but he has a decent season and he's a for cheap sign next year. Maybe they just keep him, but I think typically NFL teams take the approach that you said, though.
Yeah, they're not going to. I mean, he was still second on the team in combined tackles last year.
Yeah.
So, that's still pretty important. He's still an important part of this defense. He still kind of makes that second level tick. So now he was Deion Jones. I just looked at the numbers. He had 137 combined tackles. Aluakon had 192 to lead the team, and you lost Aluakon. So
yeah,
Deion Jones has to pick up that production next season, or else, yes, Debo is next. But it won't be this year.
Aluakon kind of became the Deion Jones that you thought he would be, right?
Yes.
Like the guy that, this goes back a while, but around the Super Bowl, a couple years after the Super Bowl, you're like, Deion Jones is the center of the Falcons defense and will be for a long time. And he's been pretty good, but not the star player we were hoping him to be. And honestly, Aluakon was that. And now he's in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really picked up a lot about Aluakon. Last year going into the season, I thought he was one of the biggest kind of one of the best unnoticed players around the league. A guy who does everything you want, can go sideline to sideline, has a great nose for the football, and everything I thought Deion Jones was about 3 or 4 years ago. But Jones hasn't showed me a lot of that the last couple of seasons. And I've been watching Falcons games very closely. And I was very impressed with Jones coming out of the Super Bowl in the following season. I really thought he was going to be a perennial Pro Bowler. But he hasn't really turned into that. He's gotten paid like that, but he hasn't turned into that.
Right.
So let's see him. Dean Pease is talking about wanting to have a dominant defense. He wants this defense to really pick up. And I think he's going to be leaning on Deion Jones to do that. And let's see if Jones can rise to the challenge. I mean, if he doesn't, well, you're not losing anything going into 2023. But let's see if he can rise to the challenge. You're not going to take on that dead cap hit anymore. You're going to have to. He's going to be here. He will be in Atlanta.
That Jones suffered an injury in week 1 of 2018, and that was his 3rd season. He was still pretty young at that time. He's still not that old now, 27. So
he's 27 years old.
At that time, he was 23. So you thought that he'd be able to recover from that injury, but I don't think he's been the same since that. I think he had a leg injury. I forget exactly what leg injury. That was the same game, same week 1 against the Eagles, where the 2 safeties, Keanu O'Neal and the other safety.
I'm blanking on the other name.
Yeah, but both of those guys suffered season-long or multiple week injuries hitting.
Keanu O'Neal was out for the year.
Yeah. So, I mean, hopefully, in the second year of Dean Pease's defense, that Deion Jones can play much better.
Yeah, well, he's got no choice. He's got to show it this year. He's got to show that he still has something, or else he will be. The Falcons will move on from him after this season.
There's a question again that I wanted to circle back to, a draft question actually, and I apologize for not being a little bit quicker with knowing where these comments are. It came from Todd about 20 minutes ago. Did we mess up not getting Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean? We could have had both.
You know, it's hard to say, Todd, because it's amazing how you got to look at the psychology of the draft room. It seemed like a rumor got started about Nakobe Dean that either he was too small and that he had a shoulder injury that he did not get
I was
addressed.
going to say it was. I thought it was the shoulder thing. He didn't get surgery on the shoulder,
but there was also a size issue. A lot of people were looking at Dean and saying, "Well, not a classic NFL linebacker as far as size." And I think at a certain point, the Falcons should have taken Nakobe Dean and said, "The hell with it," and went ahead and he dropped so far in the draft that you could have gotten this talent for an incredible value. And I do think they should have taken him. Because, see, again, to me, you're looking at size, you're looking at the prototype linebacker, and no, Nakobe Dean does not fit your prototype as far as a linebacker. However, again, I don't care about prototypes. I want to see what the guy does on the field. Prototype linebacker means nothing to me. Mike Singletary came into Chicago, was a short linebacker, middle linebacker, was expected to get overpowered, was going to, not going to be able to make plays because he was too short. Guy's in the Hall of Fame. All right. I don't care what size he is. I don't care if he lines up as a prototype or not. I don't care if he's got the classic linebacker build. Again, is he making plays? Nakobe Dean made plays. So go back to the film and see what this guy did for Georgia. And, I do think the Falcons missed when they didn't pick him up, when they let him continue to slide and he finally, got drafted. But I think the Falcons missed an opportunity.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit because that'll be fun. And I'm going to share Pantera's comment here first. And he brings up a good point. They'd already drafted a linebacker in the second round in Anderson. I guess they passed on Dean multiple times. I mean, they passed on him, of course, in the first round at number 8. And then in the second round, they had 2 picks where they did draft defensive players, which I think we both like and Pantera obviously likes. So we would not. I like Nakobe Dean too. I can't say that it's a mistake to take Anderson instead of Dean. I'm not going to say that. I don't know. I'm not a draft expert. I'm not a linebacker scout. So, but I guess my question that I want to ask you, the 2 times that the Falcons passed on Dean in the third round to take Desmond Ridder and D'Angelo Malone, would you have taken Dean instead of one of those 2 players?
Yes.
Okay.
Because at that point, it becomes a value pick. You're getting somebody in the third round who actually had been projected as a higher pick. So go ahead and take that value. Sometimes you got to do that. At number 8, no, I don't take him. And the second round, no. Sure. The Falcons took a wide receiver at 8. They still need an edge rusher. So what the Falcons did in round 2, worked perfectly. They ended up coming out with the wide receiver and edge rusher. They didn't get the premier edge rusher. They didn't get the best edge rusher, but they did get a good one. They did get one who should be able to, his talent should translate to the NFL. But yeah, in the third round, Nakobe Dean becomes a value pick. You're getting him for a lot less than you expected to get him before the draft started. And yeah, I thought they should have taken him. They should have went ahead with him. Could they have gotten Ridder later at quarterback? It's possible. obviously they wanted the quarterback, but they could have taken, they could have gone with the next pick and taken him and still, you could have gone instead of Malone. You could have gone Nakobe Dean. Still done fairly well, in my opinion. I think they would have been fine doing that. So
Dean went right after Malone. Malone went 82nd. Dean went 83rd to the Philadelphia Eagles. So that is interesting that he lasted just one more pick after the Falcons' second third-round pick. I hate to bring up the Ridder discussion again that we had last week because I guess I probably didn't win that discussion. So don't want to bring up the same argument and lose again. But that was kind of what I was getting at last week when I was talking about, how do you evaluate Ridder in one season? And is he your franchise guy? How can you determine if he's your franchise guy or not and or are you taking a quarterback again next year if the team is bad? And I think the easy solution is, if the team is bad, then Ridder's not playing well and you take a quarterback again. Fine. But it just seems like it just seems to me that the team took a flyer on Desmond Ridder. And the third round isn't really where I would take a flyer. I know it was a value pick because some places like Bleacher Report had him as like a top 15 player in this class. So if you look at that and you say, oh, they got Ridder at 74, then great. It's a great value pick. But we're just talking now about how Nakobe Dean would have been a great value pick too. And it would have, of course, quarterback is a need, but it would have, it would have been an entirely defensive draft almost, except for Drake London in the first 2 days. But that's the kind of draft that the Falcons need to really fix and shore up this defense.
Yeah. You're also thinking that without Ridder, you're going into the season with Felipe Franks and probably Josh Rosen again. And you can't do that.
Well, like you said, they could have drafted a quarterback later.
Yes, they could have.
I don't know how they evaluated, Sam Howell and Matt Corral, who went on day 2. So maybe he wouldn't have been there. The Falcons didn't pick in the 4th round. So they would have been looking at 5th round quarterback. And actually by then Howell was gone as far as, even though Howell dropped, Howell was gone. Bailey Zip was gone, the kind of weird pick to the New England Patriots. So maybe they looked at it as, we have to get a quarterback on day 3, even if I don't think they looked at it as a reach, but we have to take Ridder or we're not going to get anybody.
I think they felt they got Ridder in the right round. But again, by the time you get to round 3, Nakobe Dean is a value pick. He is probably the best value on the board because you got him graded high. Again, the problem is, and we get to this same conversation with Trayvon Walker. The guy went from being barely in the first round, being barely talked about as a first-round edge rusher, to being the number 1 guy because of his combine. You got to go back to the film. You got to look at the film and see what this guy has done. You may not have been as impressed with Nakobe Dean at the combine or at the pro day or whatever. But, go back to the film again. And the film showed that Nakobe Dean was a value, that you could have taken him number 3 and gotten a guy who was projected to be one of the best players in the draft. So it's hard to pass a guy up at that point. But, the Falcons did what they did. Terry Fontenot's second draft. He felt he had different priorities. And apparently he felt like, Nakobe Dean wasn't the guy he needed. I don't know. But I think they're going to – I think that one's going to come back to bite him.
I realize I want to talk about Jordan Davis now. And I realize that if we are advocating for them to take Dean in the 3rd round and then Davis at number 8, then we're talking about like an all defensive draft here. But again, I wouldn't have been against that with how the Falcons have played defense the last few years. And Drake London might turn out to be a great player. We talked about, not loving taking a wide receiver at number 8. We don't have to rehash that. But to answer, I think it was was it Wallace? Wallace asked about if it was a mistake not taking Jordan Davis. I would have taken Jordan Davis. Is it a mistake? I don't know. I can't say for sure. It's definitely a mistake, but I would have really loved the Jordan Davis pick at number 8 in the first round. Or, I don't know. It's tough to say, like, strategy wise, well, this is what they did wrong, because we don't know what they tried to do. Maybe the Falcons did try to trade back and get Davis at 12 or 13. Maybe they didn't love his value at number 8, but maybe nobody wanted to trade up to number 8 with the Falcons. So they took who they thought was the best value or best player at that position.
And that's always the interesting part of the draft, is everybody says what they should have done or what they think he should have done. It probably was not possible, especially in a draft where you did not have a quarterback that anybody wanted to trade up for.
Right.
That everybody figured, well, I can get my position player. I can get my player at my spot. So sometimes it's not as easy to trade back as people think.
Right.
Because, you got to have somebody who wants to come up and get an impact player. So, you're right, Dave. You never know what's going on in the draft room as people start getting ready to make picks. It's a mystery. They don't, they might have tried to trade down and just weren't able to do it and took the guy they felt was the one they needed. They feel like Drake London pairs up very well with Kyle Pitts. Two big, tall receivers who can go get the ball over undersized, defensive backs. Going to be a good target for Mariota. And that's the idea they went into the draft with. And, we'll see if they're right. But yeah, you never know what is going on in the draft room. You're probably right. They probably did try to trade back.
And it's the same with the quarterback too. We don't know. Maybe Ritter was the last guy that they liked, and they had to get him in the 3rd round. Maybe it was more of, well, this guy's fallen to us, we'll take him. That's the feeling that I got, but I can't say that that's 100% what happened. So, I think that's what makes draft grades so ridiculous. Basically, they're fun to read about, and they're fun, a good way to learn about the new players on your team, but it's definitely the NFL draft is an inexact science. So how do you grade that inexact science?
Especially the hell of it is when I've always done draft grades, and I've covered drafts before as a writer, and you can never grade a draft, in my opinion. You don't grade a draft on the players you pick. You grade a draft immediately based on, did you fill your needs? Did you get the guys who you feel are going to be players for you in the coming season? Did you shore up those weaknesses? Did you shore up that pass rush weakness? Did you replace Luakon with somebody who could maybe not make the same impact as him, but can, it is going to be important, can make tackles, can move in the backfield, in defensive backfield? Did you get your wide receiver that you feel is going to be your number 1 for the next 5 years? That's the kind of thing you got to look at. You grade it out later, a couple of years from now, you could say, well, yeah, they really missed on this one. This, it was terrible on that one. But, until then, you can only grade it based on what did they do to fill their needs.
Right. And, overall, I know that we discussed the Falcons draft the first 2 days in length, but then the 3rd day happened immediately after last week's show. Overall, I thought the draft was good for the Falcons. If I was going to give it a grade, it would probably a B. I think better than perhaps the last couple years. And that's even with me not loving their first round pick. So to me, that really says that they had, it helped that they had a lot of picks. The Matt Ryan trade, the Julio Jones trade, they had extra day 2 picks, but I thought they did pretty well.
Yeah, so do I. As I said, I think they did the best they could to address their needs.
Right.
Um,
yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Now they'll go into the season and see if they were successful at addressing their needs. But they went into the draft and they did what they needed to do. They got the players they needed to take at the positions they needed. So now let's see how that comes out. We'll see how good their scouting was. Did their scouts get it right? Did Fontenot get it right? Or, are we going to lose on this one? That's what makes the season so fun. We're going to see how well these guys slot into an NFL lineup. Can they play football? That's the thing. Do they have a head for the ball? Can they play football? Can they get to where they need to be on the field? That's always the fun part of watching a young team.
We've about 10 minutes left in the show. Today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app in your app store. Get started today. And when you do, use that promo code ASU. That supports us, our channel, right, and it gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. So basically free money. And as we talked about at the beginning of the show, even though there's no football, NFL football anyway.
No NFL, but you got the USFL. That's going.
Right. So you got the USFL and baseball, NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, plenty of other things to place entries on. And to get started, use that promo code ASU and you get a 100% match on that first deposit. Again, up to $100.
And they got soccer. You can make prop picks on the Premier League. Harry Kane, is he going to get more than 2.5 shots against Liverpool? You never know. I mean, how's Liverpool's defense? Can Kane get more than 2.5 shots off? It's these kind of things you can bet on different sports. So you can you get a lot of opportunities. So take a look.
And give us a like and subscribe to our channel as well. If you like listening to us, we are live every Saturday at noon Eastern time, 11 a.m. Central, where Tom is in Chicago. And there's lots of other Georgia sports content on the channel. If you check out Atlanta Sports Unlimited and subscribe on YouTube, there's Braves coverage, other Falcons coverage, Hawks, Georgia, other colleges in the state of Georgia. So check out the channel and subscribe to Atlanta Sports Unlimited.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Check it out. And we have fun here every Saturday morning. So join us on Saturdays and, a lot of great content. So we work hard to try and bring something to you.
So let's end today with just a little bit of Dynasty talk. From the rookies that are the incoming rookies from the NFL draft last week. And it's really early is the first advice I would say. And I think if you're going to be doing any research for your Dynasty League or your redraft league, if you just want to learn the rookies, it's just read about the guys, read about who landed where, and really concentrate on the rookies that have landed in good offenses is where I would start. There were a lot of wide receivers drafted early. Some of them didn't actually, I would say even most of them didn't land with a great quarterback or in a great offense. And I'm not saying don't draft them or don't read about them, but if you have limited time and you're focusing your research on, just a particular set of players, that's the first thing you can do to eliminate some guys is circle the names that landed with teams that have good offenses and good quarterbacks. So I guess for today, maybe I'll just give out 5 names that I like at running back and wide receiver. We can talk briefly about the quarterbacks, and I got a few tight ends as well. But at running back, I mean, this is going to break the thing I just said about great offenses, great quarterbacks, but Bryce Hall seemed to be by far and away the number one running back in this class, landed with the New York Jets. I don't love that because I have Michael Carter on my dynasty team. I would have loved to have seen Carter become the guy in New York, but Hall is very talented. Maybe they'll pair him with Michael Carter and there'll be a pretty good dual threat as they try to figure things out on that Jets offense. So Bryce Hall is definitely the top rookie back for dynasty leagues. I'm not sure yet if I love him in redraft leagues again because of the Jets, but I think he's
but the Jets picked up a good wide receiver too.
Well, I mean, the question again though with the Jets, and it will be until they fix it, is the quarterback situation.
Well, are we going to see improvement out of Zach Wilson this year?
Maybe. I wouldn't say
they worked hard to put pieces around Zach Wilson. So are we going to see some improvement? Again, you got Garrett Wilson, Bryce Hall. They picked up a tight end. He picked up some guys who, really should make a difference in this offense. So it's going to be interesting to see. But can you take Hall knowing that you got a Zach Wilson, a still unproven Zach Wilson, a quarterback?
I would say yes because he's a running back. If he was a wide receiver, I would say no. I wouldn't say don't take him at all, but I would have him further down my draft board because he's a running back. Yes, his opportunities will be more limited. It's his opportunities to score, and that's really what you want. You want running backs getting in the end zone. That will be limited until the Jets offense takes that next step. But Hall, I think, is just above and beyond the other running backs in this class that he would be number one on any dynasty league running back list right now, and is the guy that you probably start with your research for this rookie class. Other names that I think you should look into: James Cook. We've talked about the Bills and their running situation the last few years. Obviously, they have Josh Allen, and they're going to be a passing team. But can Cook be involved in the passing game? Perhaps. And the Bills, I think, if they're going to win a Super Bowl, need to do more running. So
yes, they do.
That is, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Cook to be the guy in that backfield. And on a great offense, potential starting running back is somebody that you really should covet. Rashard White in Tampa Bay, Tyron Davis Price in San Francisco is another guy that I am intrigued by. And this guy's going to break the advice I gave at the top as well. But Kenneth Walker, because he was so dynamic in college and he seems to fit what Seattle wants to do. I don't love that, the Seahawks now have Drew Lock as their starting quarterback, but Pete Carroll
apparently they're going to have Drew Lock as their starting quarterback.
And you know what? It doesn't surprise me that much because I think part of what led to the Russell Wilson divorce was they want to run the ball and Wilson wants to throw more. He wants to be up there in MVP voting and all that stuff, that's fine if Wilson wants those individual accolades, but it just wasn't going to happen in Seattle. Seattle and Pete Carroll, they want to run the ball and play solid defense. And even though they have Drew Lock, the volume that Kenneth Walker could get this year makes him a viable fantasy option.
Just remember that the Broncos brought in Teddy Bridgewater last year because they didn't have faith in Drew Lock as their quarterback.
I'm not saying Drew Lock is good. Are you mistaking what I'm saying for that?
Probably.
I like Walker because he's going to get so many opportunities because Drew Lock is so bad. And again, like I have Kenneth Walker listed second on my list. I think that was because he was the second running back taken. If I was actually to rank these guys right now, and this is going to change. I mean, it's May 7th.
Sure it is.
This is going to change. But he is a name to watch is what I'm saying. He's a guy that if you're going to start researching this weekend for your rookie draft, read about Kenneth Walker. He's a guy that could be good in this league for a long time.
All right, fair enough.
And you know what? I'm going to save the rest of the positions for next week or upcoming episodes because we're just about out of time here. And but
I
again,
tell you, this hour passes really quick.
it does.
Probably the fastest hour we go through.
And again, this is going to change. And by no means am I saying that in August, these are the top 5 running backs that you got to take in rookie drafts. There's other guys that I have on this list that are intriguing. Samir White, Isaiah Spiller, the Falcons running back from BYU. Jerome Ford is a really interesting handcuff in Cleveland. Kalen Williams with the Rams, if you're targeting guys in great offenses. So there are a lot of running backs that actually right now that I like their situations. So and there'll be even more wide receivers to talk about when we talk about that position.
Absolutely. You got it.
So thanks for tuning in this Saturday. We'll be back next week to discuss the NFL schedule release that's coming up Thursday, May 12th. We'll find out. We already know the opponents.
We know the opponents. We just don't know the order and when.
Right, right. So we know who the Falcons will be playing, but we'll learn when and where. Well, I guess we know the where. We'll learn the when. And we'll find out if they have any primetime games too. They'll surely have at least one, probably a Thursday night game.
Well, based on the television contracts, each team has to have at least one. Right.
That's what I'm saying. They'll have at least one, probably a Thursday night, which I won't love that since that's now on Amazon Prime. But we'll be discussing the NFL schedule release next Saturday and maybe dive into some more of these rookies for your Dynasty League.
Yeah, sounds great. Have a great week. Have a great week, everyone. Look forward to seeing you next week.